In the ever-evolving world of business, a revolution is underway. Welcome to Hyperconnected Journeys, where the future of success begins right now. I'm your host, Ian Faison, and I'm joined by my co-host and industry leader, Raj Porkesta, to guide you through the intricacies of network transformation. We're here to be your compass in the realm of network transformation in a world that's customer-centric and interconnected. Join us on unleashing the power of hyperconnectivity. Welcome to Hyperconnected Journeys. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Raj. Raj, how are you?
Good, yeah. Brilliant. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream, you know. I got no complaints. And we have a special guest today. Kimberly, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks, Ian. Thrilled to be here with you and Raj today.
Same here, Kim. Brilliant to meet you.
Yeah, and we're going to dig all into Kimberly's background today, doing a couple really cool digital transformations at other companies, and then now a really unique challenge here at Trellix. Well, challenge, but in the best type of way. So tell us a little bit about your current role at Trellix.
Perfect. So I joined Trellix about 2 years ago. Really excited to be here. For me, it's the perfect next step for what I have been doing. So I've been in technology for over 25 years. The first half of my career was spent very much in product engineering, delivering solutions and technology and products for customers across various industries. Spent the most time at Nielsen, where I definitely fell in love and built a lot of muscle around data and working in the media space as well as consumer packaged goods. That set me up for a position of the CIO role, actually. So I made a move from the CTO world and product and went into the CIO role to really help unlock what it would mean in terms of true technology enablement and really that first step of digital transformation for the employee experience. Worked at Nielsen in that role for about 5 years and then went to Iron Mountain and worked with their digital transformation. And so when Trellix came around, it was perfect for me in terms of my passion for technology, as well as transformation, but even more so in security, which had been something that I'd worked on for many years. And so to work now for the cybersecurity software firm, to be customer zero and get to really be the best voice of a customer in terms of what our product should do and how we're using that Trellix, just, was the ideal spot to make that move.
I know there's a bit of sort of, there's always different ways to think about it. How do you think about, the relationship between, CIO and CISO and something that I know have honed over the years in both those type of roles?
It's such a great question. And it's something I am really passionate about. It was at Nielsen where we built our first cybersecurity organization. While we had security, for many years, Nielsen was not necessarily, the most digital of forms in terms of the solutions that we sent out to our customers. And so I got to hire our first CISO and build a cybersecurity program. And it was absolutely fantastic. I feel like when the two are together, you can move very quickly because there's aligned goals. And, just organizationally, you don't feel those barriers. When I moved to Iron Mountain, the CISO role and CIO role were actually separated under different organizations. And while I at first felt a little uncomfortable about that and wondered, how effective we could be, what I found that it was also a very, very successful model and allowed me actually to become more connected into the business and what our customer needs were as we were very tied into both the public sector, healthcare, financial services, and the governance and regulation that came with it. But what we learned there that I really took here to Trellix, so regardless of the model, it's about bringing that IT and IS strategy together. When it's the technology strategy for the enterprise that really is the vehicle for a security strategy as well. Everyone, it just makes sense. It clicks and everybody works together much more effectively versus having two different strategies. So for me, they're both critically important roles. Having built products for customers for years, I absolutely fell in love with working for the enterprise and the opportunity that I get as a technologist to bring better, faster, more agile and digital capabilities to our employees so that we can ultimately deliver to customers and whatever those products and services may be.
And how important, coming into this new role is connectivity and thinking about, business objectives?
It's been super interesting here at Trellix. This is the first experience I've had where we brought two fantastic companies and enterprises, large companies, together. Trellix is the formation of what I believe is the best cybersecurity platform, bringing together what McAfee Enterprise had delivered for many years and FireEye. And so having that full breadth of security portfolio, I believe is, the first company that will truly bring extended detection and response XDR to our customers. And so connectivity is so important, obviously, from how our solutions work together, how our teams, our global teams, in dozens of countries all around the world work together, but also our solutions themselves, how our endpoint technology and our security operations technology and our data loss protection technology that came from two different companies that we've now brought into one portfolio. There were multiple data centers, there were multiple cloud implementations, and so we spent time right up front putting the right centers of excellence in place, both from an infrastructure perspective on-prem within data centers, but also obviously in cloud. And in multiple clouds. So the connectivity, the architecture, the strategy, and the team to execute was a real foundational item that if we didn't get that right, people couldn't do their work and our customers certainly weren't going to get the solutions they needed. I've also found that the most, a critical element of it, not only putting the time in and establishing that foundation, but also doing it with the right partners. It's really important to have that partner strategy to be able to deliver quickly and to be able to understand, what others are doing across the market. I think it's great with the conversations that you lead and the different, technology leaders to be able to understand what others are doing, what best practices, what challenges or failures people ran into. That's a huge part of getting that right. Connectivity being one piece, but a real foundational piece.
Raj, I don't know if you have any follow-ups there. I think I have 100.
Yeah, so the first question, Kim, that I have for you is, you spoke about the difference when the CISO was aligned and when the CISO was different, right? In a different group. Um, what are the advantages and disadvantages of this as you see? I'm very intrigued with that perspective because from my side, what I see when I go and speak to organizations where the CISO has a different is sitting in a different org structure, is that the KRAs being different, sometimes there'll be friction. Now you said in Iron Mountain it worked out well. How did it happen, and how did you come together? It's very interesting from that perspective. I'm sure the listeners would love to know that.
Yeah. And I do think it's really important, for sure, for the folks who sit within the CISO organization, the folks who sit within the CIO organization, they feel it most, but really the entire organization is better or worse off depending on how the model is in place and how the relationships and the culture work. And I didn't really understand that until I was at Iron Mountain. And here at Trellix, the organization is back together where the CISO is part of my organization. But what I really learned at Iron Mountain was how important it is to understand the full breadth of your security strategy, whether it be in your compliance and governance, your interaction with, the different, parts of your portfolio customer base, right? Healthcare being quite different than we had in public sector, or different than, some of the technology customers we supported. Also the actual, technology itself. It's so important for a CISO. The CISO gets up every day and, kind of has a bullseye on the back, or maybe the feeling of it, in terms of all the different, threat actors and the ways, that your organization could be targeted. They sit in the position where more and more of the organization is opened up to make things simple and fast, hybrid work. But they're the ones who, the job is to protect the organization and make sure nothing goes wrong. It's a little bit of obviously a vulnerable position. On the CIO side, you have the responsibility, but also to some degree the control to make the decisions of how open an enterprise is or how people work. And so when those sit separately and they aren't aligned or haven't invested the time to align, it can be extremely frustrating on both sides because the CIO may feel there's limitations and can't serve the business because of what policy and security processes in place. And so it's quite easy for the two to be at odds. But when it comes together, when you just spend the time to build the relationship and to think equally about the business you're serving, because both are all about enabling the business. It's protecting the business, but enabling the business. And when you build that strategy together and you make technology decisions together, it's a little humbling because it may not be the fastest for a CIO to do certain things that the CISO really wants. But when you give on both sides and you align, it just all of a sudden creates this amazing feeling of relief, and it opens up speed to really get to what the business needs. And it sounds, I would have never thought about the time and investment to make because we're all part of the same company. It's like, of course we would, be aligned and we're working towards the same, we're talking to the same business leaders, but we were having different conversations because we were different organizations and we were being approached as separate. I need something from Kim over here. I need something from the CISO over there. We made it our method and our approach to go forward once we saw some of those, gaps or areas of friction. We made it a point to say to the organization, we have an IT and IS strategy together, and we refresh it each year, and we have quarterly reviews. And when you are looking to engage and say, how does technology enable me? It's not just a CIO technology conversation. It's a technology, secure technology. It's the reliable technology. It's got the protections, and we do it together, CIO and CISO. I can't say, it's always brilliant and seamless, but it really was a mindset shift that I wouldn't have realized before because how I had been organized. And it really is something that I find is powerful. And as I talk to, colleagues or customers today, I encourage whatever your model is, you really invest in that relationship at the highest level, but also throughout the organization.
So it's about relationship, culture, and the mindset, right?
Absolutely.
Those are the three main things that comes together. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
The technology implementation itself is easy once you get through all of that people stuff.
Of course.
And you mentioned foundations being important. How do you think about the zipping up of these two companies and building a digital foundation between two seemingly similar-ish companies, obviously coming together, but no two companies are actually that similar once you get under the hood.
Absolutely. They're different culturally. They're different in terms of the technology used, the partners used, and it was really important to us not to fall into the trap of which one feels either bigger or cleaner or easier. A lot of times it's about what feels easier to do. It's important to think about what are we trying to do, and I think about digital transformation that people have been talking about for years, but it's meant different things. And for me, at the core of it is, how do we make things easier? How do we really get all that technology has to offer so that we can work much more quickly in the agile world, in the world where business dynamics are like we've never seen before, because there are connections and information and data that's possible to be able to make different decisions, whether it's your customers that you're serving or within the business. That's where digital really hits the spot. And that's where digital really, I think, makes sense to people. When you look at what does digital mean, number one, it's the employee experience. How can I create the environment that regardless of where my employees sit, 10 years ago, definitely had employees all around the world. But today, hybrid workforce and really, being able to enable the employees wherever they are, however they're working on whatever they're working on, that employee experience is all, where it needs to be when you have the right digital strategy. Along with employee experience, it's how quickly you can change, which is, going to allow you to show up and serve and improve that employee experience. But that agility is so important. And for me, part of that is the the time you put in to make sure your strategy and your overall architecture work. It's not, what solution do I need for finance? What solution do I need for sales? What solution do I need for this operations team? I have seen, and I've been part of, discussions with vendors and looking at certain software solutions where we've said, this is the best solution. This is best in class. This is what everybody uses for this or that. And what we found is, 6 months down the line after implementation, someone somewhere is frustrated because sales and finance are looking at different data, or they are unable to get certain insights because those systems aren't connected. So I believe strongly in the connected architecture and architecture that works. And when you think about it with data at the core, data has to flow across systems. When you get that right, that speed and agility come. And for me, those are, the really key elements about that employee experience. It's about an enterprise strategy for your platforms and how they are, how they interact, how they're integrated, and how that foundation of data underneath all of it is really, I believe, the secret sauce and the magic that makes it all happen.
How long approximately has the process take? Well, I guess there's no ever an end date, but like, how long has the process taken?
So I would definitely say, the job is never done, which is why I've been in technology for this long. I love the continuous change. I love the evolution of technology and the evolution of business. And it's why I ended up in the CIO role and haven't, moved away from it, because you always have something new to solve. But for Trellix, putting a circle around, some form of done in terms of, did we, get through the phase where we actually operate the way, we set out to do? I would say in my first 6 months in the company, we took a major step to separate from the companies that we had been part of. So that's always interesting, whether you're doing M&A and you're acquiring a company and bringing it in, or pulling a piece out of a company, or bringing two companies together like we did here at Trellix. That happened in the first 6 months. And I didn't step in from the very beginning, but part of that meant putting that enterprise platform structure in place. So, our finance system, our human capital management system for all of the employees, things like payroll and benefits, as well as our sales, our commercial platform for how we do our marketing, and all of our, commercial engagement with our customers. That was a 6-month step. Along with that was some of the infrastructure elements that come along, whether it was our data centers and making sure we had the visibility, things like, it doesn't sound as exciting, but things like asset management and the connectivity between, these, infrastructure assets that had come from two different companies, as well as that cloud connectivity and building out that architecture and the guardrails for how all of our employees would interact, and our products running in AWS as a primary partner. It was important to work directly with them and set that up for, what was two different companies and two different sets of standards to what would be one Trellix. And then the last piece that happened in the 6 months, I wouldn't call it done, but what we did was set up our data strategy and the work to understand and catalog where data was, whether it was around our products and the telemetry that told us, where our products were, what our customers were doing, things like being able to update and, maximize how our advanced research center works for threat intelligence, which is so important in a security company. Those foundational elements of where the data was, how the data was being used, and what needed to evolve with our data in terms of bringing these two companies together. That's what we went into a phase 2. So after the first 6 months of setting ourselves up, the next year, I would say, with incremental value being delivered throughout the year, but the next year was really focused on what we call our enterprise data platform and bringing it all together. It's not just a data lake. It's about how we govern data. It's about how we integrate data, how we harmonize and cleanse data, how we have the ability to continue to evolve the data in terms of, again, where we're going with our products and our customer base. And then the other piece that came with it was really opening up AI which was great timing with everything over the last year that we've seen with generative AI. But that was, to me, the next phase that I would say took about a year. And now we're at we're in the phase of really looking at how do you just create that model and cycle and framework for what comes new from the business. So it's that next step of maturity to really operate based on that foundation that we put in place.
Raj, how are you thinking about, the term digital foundation for enterprises?
Good question. Kim talked about how she's trying to bring everything together, right? And in my mind, that's a fabric. Kim, if I may use that word, right? And that's what we have been seeing from our clients world over. That everybody is talking about how the fabric comes together, how the digital fabric comes together, right? And the reason for that is that when you think about our ecosystem at this point of time, it's hyper connected, right? Meaning that everything is connected to everything else, and it's not only internal but also external. Meaning that when you go to your customers, when you go to your partners, you will have a hyper connected ecosystem, which in today's state is extremely or heavily technology dependent, right? And that's where somebody like Kim would be looking at the right infra, the right application, and the right application and the right infra may not be the best of the best, right? And she talked about it in terms of the best of the systems may not be the right system for the business. And that's where businesses need the right infra, applications, etc., to bring this together. Now, when you think about the complexity of all this coming together, think about connectivity, collaboration, cloud, edge, IoT, etc. All this has incredible level of complexities when they come together. And then, from Trellix perspective, I'm assuming that you didn't have a lot of legacy, but when you think about maybe Iron Mountain, which had a huge legacy per se, good and bad. That legacy also comes in with processes, with systems, which becomes another hurdle, if I may use that word, and that's where skill shortages and all come together, right? Now, when we think about a fabric, telecommunications talks about digital fabric. What we think about is that how do we bring the platforms, the solutions, the tools, all of them together and make it simple for somebody like him, right? So that, at the end of the day, she can go back and say, okay, for me, the highest priority is employee experience. I want to deliver that. Make it simple for me, right? So that's what digital fabric in our mind is.
I love how you talk about the complexity. There's always different complexities in each situation. What I found at Trellix was, to your point, it wasn't a major change management from a people and process, because one of the great aspects was I came in to build Trellix and bring together assets from two different companies. Whereas in the past, as you mentioned, Iron Mountain, but also at Nielsen, we went through that change together as an organization. And human nature is, don't move my cheese. I'm doing my job. I've learned to do it really well. You're going to do what, and that's hard. That change management, I would say, is probably, one of two most complex parts of the role for a CIO: change management and adoption, and the integration, across the systems and the processes. That's really the big deal. And we have to look for ways to minimize both. Not necessarily the technology itself, but a big part of change management adoption for me is what I love about Agile: bringing people, the users, into the program right from day one. In all three companies, actually, I went through a migration from Microsoft Office 365 into Google Workspace. And for collaboration, each was different, but with all three, what we did was we brought the folks from finance who loved Excel, folks from the legal department who had to worry about documents and contracts and red lines.
Mm-hmm.
Every aspect of the organization, we brought in a leader right from day one and provided hands-on demos and had them with us through the whole program. And it made the adoption so much better because there were champions, those change champions within the business. It wasn't, IT pushing something out to the organization. So that was one element of it. The other is really about the technology architecture. And I'm a big fan and a passionate advocate for really looking at platforms and architecture. It's not just, how cool a screen looks or what, the latest app is on the phone. It's what's the underlying architecture and where are there open architectures where I know I'll be able to integrate and bring, again, data and the processes across those platforms. Because the best position I can be in for the organization is to know that I have the flexibility to change out parts and pieces as the business changes. If I have, a multi-year effort, my goodness, I can't even imagine anymore. Now it's about, multi-quarter. But years ago, if you had a multi-year effort to be able to bring value to the business, they're going to find someone else to do it. So you really need to be set up with that, with that plan, that architecture, and the framework where technology change is the easy part.
You mentioned one of my favorite words, which is employee experience, because I am always tickled by the fact that if you were to sit back and talk to a CIO 20 years ago and you're like, hey, by the way, you're also in charge of employee experience, they'd be like, excuse me, what?
Exactly. What does that mean?
Like, I don't even know what that means. Yeah. But you mentioned that being, a key part of this, especially in your new role as, zipping the two companies together. And yeah, how do you think about workforce enablement for enhanced productivity?
It's something that is really near and dear. After building products for customers for several years, being able to come into what people are referring to as back office and talk about user experience. Like you said, people are like, "What do you mean?" We did on the client facing side, we did usability testing. We did agile and engaged with user groups and got feedback. You do it on the enterprise side and everybody looks at you like you're crazy because we roll out SAP, we roll out Salesforce, and they're going to use it, right? This is an enterprise tool, they have to, that's the job. So I didn't coin the term, but as people began talking about employee experience, it just really stuck with me and it became my probably key or top priority at each of the companies I've been with. Because when we get the employee experience right, when someone doesn't feel friction, or my hope is when they feel like joy and actually enjoy the tools they're using, everything is better, right? We're productive, we feel good, we're satisfying our customers. And so it is really important. So I look for products and tools and capabilities that are more like what we use at home. My philosophy is, as much as we've seen technology, there are new apps every day or there are upgrades in our personal world as consumers. We should have that same experience in the enterprise. Now, it can't be exactly the same because we have to worry about security. We have to worry about how, thousands of people potentially operate together. Whereas at home, I may have to, sync and use some of the same tooling as my kids if I want to, know what's going on in their world. At work, it's a requirement that we work together. And so it's not a completely open-ended conversation about what tech, but we should have that same feeling of technology that works, technology that is continuously being upgraded and new features and functionalities coming out. That, cool feeling you get when there's, something new in Spotify or, what's being offered by your favorite app. You should feel that at work. And I really believe it. And when that happens, it just, it brings, like I said, ultimately joy that makes the day job a lot better. And teams, not worried about, did this work today, or I couldn't get into this system, or this locked up. That shouldn't be part of the conversation. We all are far too busy, and the business, needs change every day. So that employee experience, you want to get to the point where people actually aren't talking about it because it's just working.
And Kim, can you give an example of something like this? I'm very intrigued. I've heard about employee experience in terms of making it easy, but employee experience in terms of converting into joy. I'm hearing it for the first time. Can you
I
give
know
some
people don't usually
examples?
they don't usually say that when they think about IT. I can tell you, when I've moved into a role or joined a company, there was one session that I was invited to, and it was a segment of the business. One of the functions was having an all hands, and there were probably about 400 people included. And they did a word cloud exercise where they asked the folks as they were kicking off the new year, "What are you excited about? What do you think is going to be our biggest path to success?" They also asked, "What are you most concerned about, or what are you most, where do we have the most pain that gets in the way of our success?" And in this word cloud, I kept seeing it. And I said to someone, I'm like, "Why is everybody so upset with it?" The person literally laughing looked at me and they said, "That's you. That's IT." And I said, "Wow, okay." I'm like, that's how we feel. So that's like the anti-joy, right? And that's just, how it's been for decades. So part of the challenge in the job is changing perception and getting people to open up and work with my organization and not, fear or roll the eyes, when we want to get together and talk about, creating business value. And that's a little bit of an uphill climb. And so, I mentioned the workplace collaboration. That's a big one for me. And I tell other CIOs, when you get that right, and, I don't want to say advocate for, one technology or another, but when you put something new in place and you've taken the organization along with it, whether it's your, again, commercial system or your workplace collaboration, but if you find that one program where it's been done collaboratively and you have people in, whether it's your daily stand-ups or your week by week, program reviews, and they're really part of the journey and defining and helping configure, that does lead to joy because they're proud of what they did to influence what the entire organization will benefit from. And so that's a major element of it. And it's not a technology challenge to solve. It's a partnership. It's a relationship like we talked about. It's that model for internal enterprise technology that when we do that right, all of a sudden, people look at you differently and they see something more as a muscle and a benefit, versus a constraint and a frustration. And that to me is what businesses will really thrive with when businesses, everyone throughout the business, regardless of what function, look at IT, look at their enabling technology organization and say, we need to do X, Y, and Z. We should bring folks from there into the conversation because we'll ultimately get to the best process or best solution by having that muscle, part of our ultimate success. That to me is a huge piece of it. I can't imagine living my life without technology, right? Trying to get to somewhere, even if it's somewhere I've been multiple times, I rely on my map or my car speaking to me. I want the same, here at work in the enterprise. That's my dream day, that, people look at it in the same way, because at that point, businesses, they're capable of anything. And really a lot of the businesses that were born post cloud, grow up that way. They don't have as many of the challenges in terms of culture or adoption because technology has been the foundation, but there are, crazy amounts of business where you've got decades of this is the way we've worked and need to change. Everybody agrees we need to change, but as soon as you start changing it, people get very uncomfortable. And to me, that's what digital transformation is all about.
Excellent. So you talked about two very important things. One is co-innovation with the users, and second is bringing in champions
Mm-hmm.
from the user groups and ensuring that they also speak about it. Yeah, that's like very
Yeah,
interesting. Thank you.
very, very important. And you can feel the change when you get those things right. Even for with one program, really focus, do it right in one program. And the word spreads, right? And people start to think and act differently. And that's what matters because no organization, when you think about it, knows how another organization works. Every aspect of it, every detail, unless you're part of it, you just don't know. So I was lucky, probably my first move into the CIO role, that some of the work was with the engineering teams that I came out of. And I remember being on the other side, being frustrated about, why do I have to wait? Back then before cloud, why do I have to wait weeks for a server or an environment? How can I innovate and move with speed when I have to wait for an ID or access, to some information? And so as I moved onto the enterprise side, I was able to take some of that, mind share and experience and help the team understand, because they couldn't possibly understand. So you really need those advocates and champions in there, and they're the best to solution with you. And sometimes that's hard for the technologists who think, who knows this better than I know this? They don't understand technology. Well, I say to the technologists, or on the enterprise IT side, you don't know everything about that part of the business. So let's just do it together. And it seems, silly and small and so obvious, but unfortunately it's not how most areas work.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, very interesting.
I'm curious, after sort of going through this entire process, what would be, maybe one of the things that surprised you most about this, or something that maybe you didn't see coming?
It's a great question. I'd be lying if I didn't say we learn every single time. As I said, I've done 3 workplace collaboration, suite migrations, and all 3 had learnings. Fortunately, there were many aspects that were the same that led to success, but there were also learnings. I would say in this latest position that I'm in with Trellix, one of the learnings that I believe is a positive learning, but the best learnings don't feel good at the time they happen. For me, or for me, it's just me, but for me, those most painful or hard and really kind of like have to muscle through situations, those are the environments and the programs or the implementations where I absolutely learn the most, because you can't forget it, right? You think about, and you should think about, like, why did we feel that pain and what happened and how do we get to a better place? I would say here at Trellix, it was the first time for me working in a situation where, double carve out, 2 companies, fantastic brands, fantastic people, engineers, product, coming together to form a new company. I personally underestimated what that would mean, not necessarily, to some degree in some of the technology. And I say that because it was more about the debates and the decisions, because people are personally passionate about, one side or the other. But more of the learning came just from, again, the cultural aspects of, what is our identity? Who are we now as a combined unit, when so many, both, the people and the tooling and technology and platforms, lived separately, their whole lives in most cases. Coming together, it was interesting, and an aha moment for me on how often things just took longer, or things were missed because we didn't really spend the time to recognize and reflect on what it was before we focused first on how do we bring it together. I jumped in with, we've got some things to do. And, I've moved data center technology to cloud, and I've built a data platform, and I've, implemented, the financial system or the commercial system. And, I don't say it like, I know everything, but I had the confidence of the technology tasks that need to be done. And in reflection, and for the future companies I work with, I will spend more time to really understand and dig in and look for what those individuals understood, and what they were passionate about, and what they were worried about, as well as what unique capabilities did we have within the systems, or unique implementation, rather than simplify, standardize, integrate, go. I want to do more to understand, why the nuance, and look for, the good in the nuance, versus look for how do I simplify and standardize.
Well, they chose the right CIO, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
It's been
I'm
fun.
sure. Question, Kim, and this may be a bit of a cliched question, but then I want to know your view on this, right? we have had AI for a long time, but with Gen AI coming in, right? This tacit knowledge that you're talking about, right, which you're building. Do you think this kind of a tacit knowledge will ever be with something like a Gen AI tool, maybe 5-10 years down the line,
Yeah,
or
I am fascinated by it. I think it's a great question, but I will definitely admit, these are very early days, and I am looking to learn. The downside of being in the role that I absolutely love is not being able to really get my hands on and work with it the way I see some of my team doing. I'm jealous. It's like really cool, but I'm realizing we are learning. You know, do I believe years down the line, and maybe not too many years down the line, um, will we rely on people and their experience in the same way? As a technologist, I'm hopeful, and my expectation is that the technology will make it even easier and maybe get rid of some of the friction, the debate, the emotion that happens because we work with humans. As a technologist, it would be great to see some of that simplified. But as a person and as a people leader and someone who has built much of my career on spending as much time on talent and leadership development as I have on technology, I don't ever want to see the day where I'm not having that human dialogue, and maybe my kids will deal with that day, but I'm hopeful I don't have to deal with that day where I don't have someone who has been working in an area and either built their career around it, or they were the ones who were awarded something one year because of the great innovation that they did. I don't want to be in a position where I won't need their information, because I want to go do the job faster, and I'm glad I don't have to worry about it. That experience, I think, that the humans have, and what we bring to it in terms of our emotional reaction to a business requirement, a crisis, a customer conversation. I'm hopeful that I don't ever lose the ability to learn and experience those aspects of the job.
I'll give you an example. I was actually meeting a few very senior leaders yesterday, and one of them were from Louis Vuitton, right? And he talked about a very interesting thing that even today they have a team which stitches the bags. It's handmade, right? What he was saying is that, can he do it uh, in a machine? The answer is yes, they can, right? But they continue to do it with those human hands, because one, they feel, and even their customers feel, that the bags are different, right? It's not machine made. There's a hand imprint on top of it, and it's different, right? So I don't know how do I put it from that perspective, but I agree with you. And also, the reason why I asked this, I was very surprised about a report that I recently read from Deloitte. When you think about Gen AI, one of the things that I'm seeing is that the report talked about that Gen AI has the maximum number of use cases in cybersecurity. I thought it would be something else, but it's in the area of cybersecurity, and I was like amazed by thinking, how did cybersecurity come on the top of the list? I would imagine productivity, customer experience, finance, where there are a lot of repetitive works which are there. Why not that, but why this? So it's interesting because cybersecurity for me is a lot of tacit knowledge, a lot of complexity, a lot of thinking ahead, rather than the repetitive work which can have the X or the delta X thought about by the Gen AI tool, right?
I love that. Both of those points. Number one, I can totally relate, and I'm going to use that story. Even though I didn't talk to Louis Vuitton, as a buyer, I can totally relate to. There are some things that I look for that I want that personal touch. I like the uniqueness that comes from something that hasn't just been cranked out in the thousands or the millions by a machine. So I think that's, great for people to continue to relate to, when we think about what does AI mean. And then in your points around security, for me, the initial, artificial intelligence that I had any exposure to was absolutely in cybersecurity. And was very grateful for those first products that came out that were able to not only give me visibility into what's happening within my enterprise, but actually take action. Endpoint detection and response. That's a beautiful thing. Not just because I, sell it today. I felt it, as a user before I ever, became to Trellix. And it makes sense to me because it's about, the volumes of data and the nuance of what a threat actor can do. And in that sense, I love that machines can do what they do, and they just get better and smarter every day. It's hard for humans. It's hard for someone's security operations center to keep up with that. And so a big piece of, why I'm at Trellix and what we sell for Trellix is the simplicity or the relief that we can provide to CISOs and their cyber teams, because I've seen in the CIO role, whether they were reporting into me, which on several occasions they were, or I sat side by side with them, there's burnout, there's exhaustion, there's, that the weight that's on their shoulders to protect the organization, to be able to react and know what to do. Many times with false positives, right? Of, you see something, you have to react, it's your job, and you go through all kinds of efforts to find out it was nothing, which is fantastic. And that, it's that moment of feeling like, oh, good, it wasn't an issue. But then you think about the cycles that you put in. And for me, that is absolutely what AI and generative AI, ultimately will bring to security analysts and cyber operations centers is, the ability to, worry about the most critical elements and real and, leave no alert behind. The only way we can leave no alert behind is to have AI and Gen AI make that job so much better in cyber.
And breathe easier, right?
Absolutely.
I think
I love that part of it for sure.
we all need to breathe a little easier. And thank goodness we have Trellix, #1 in EDR, #1 in NDR, and #1 in XDR. Kim, it's been wonderful having you on the show. For our listeners, you can go check out Trellix.com and learn all about that. Kim, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Just thank you. Thank you, Ian, Raj. It's been a great conversation. Would love to do it again in the future, but thank you for all that you're doing to spread the word and bring us together as a community. 'Cause the more we interact, the more we learn from each other, the better off everyone's going to be.
Thank you.
Agreed. Take care. Thank you for joining us on Hyperconnected Journeys, where we explore the minds of technology innovators future-proofing their digital infrastructure. Go ahead and leave us a comment to share your thoughts on today's episode, and be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts to stay updated on our latest episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, unleash your own power of hyperconnectivity.